Good morning, everybody, and welcome to today's open forum. Today's open forum, we're going to talk about the as-is contract. Normally, I would take a blank one and kind of fill it out with you guys. We have done that before. Today, I just picked a random one from our collection, back office collection here, and we're going to go through it. This one, we were the listing brokerage on this one. This was written by someone at Coldwell Banker, as you can tell from the logo. And we're going to go over this contract and kind of pick it apart and see what they did well and what they didn't do well. Before we begin, do you guys have any questions on anything that we need to talk about before we do this? Anything exciting? Nope. Great. Let's talk about this. So here we are. This is an as-is contract, residential contract for sale and purchase. These are FAR forms, as you guys know. We call them FAR. Florida Association of Realtors and the Florida Bar. So that's your FAR and your BAR. They come up with these forms so anyone can fill them out. Any licensed real estate agent can fill out these forms. They make it very simple, so we can't really mess it up unless you start writing your own legalese on these. So as long as you're filling in blanks, you're pretty legal. The point, though, is, and I get this all the time, you guys say, hey, Ryan, will you review this contract for me? If I don't know what you're trying to achieve with your contract, if I don't know what your buyer's objective is with your offer, it's called an offer until it's signed by everybody. If I don't know what your objective is with your offer, I can't tell you anything other than, yeah, it's a legal contract because you filled in the blanks. But if I don't know what they're trying to accomplish, I can't really help you make sure that it's what you want to send to someone. So when you do send me stuff to review, I kind of need to know what it is your buyer is trying to accomplish. Otherwise, I'm gonna have a lot of questions for you. In this case, this is done well from the seller standpoint and the buyer standpoint, let's assume. We have everything there that we need. That is the legal name that they got from the seller for this. Sorry, from the listing agent. Okay, price, $460. I don't have any idea what the asking price was, but this contract was accepted, $460. $1,000 down. For you guys, I would like to see more than $1,000 down on a $460,000 deal, but I don't know what any kind of extenuating circumstances were here, but that's what I would like to see. I do like that they checked the next box on line 30 and they put the 3 in the blank, even though it's supposed to be 3 anyway. Please fill in the blanks. I like that they did that here. Christian, so everything here, guys, and we always talk about this, is negotiable. So the $1,000 down was completely negotiable. Okay, they might have had a reason they only want to do $1,000 down, but whatever. You're doing the best service for your client if you get more money down, because if they walk away, at least they have some deposit, some skin in the game. Okay, so this is all fine. The escrow agent's name, 95% financing. Don't leave blanks here. It will automatically fill this out for you. Just don't leave blanks if you can help it, and you can help it. There's your date for acceptance, which is the same date that the buyer initialed it, which is weird, but who knows? Maybe they already had it worked out what they were going to do. And there's your date for closing a month later. Very, very, very normal. Occupancy and possession. I want to talk about this. Occupancy and possession. If this is a house that has been is leased, or if they're going to live there after closing, check this box. Be very careful if you were the listing agent on a property that is leased. It's a investment property, or if your seller is going to stay there after closing. If you do not check this box, or make sure that the buyer's agent checks this box, or you make sure this box is checked, and then you have to have everybody initial it. Otherwise, you have to have the place broom swept and ready to occupy on closing date. That is not what you want to be doing. If you have obviously an investment property with a tenant, you can't do that. You can't promise that, and they can hold your feet to the fire. You signed a contract that said you would have them out that day, so that's a breach. Okay, so make sure, just pay attention if you have an investment property that this is done. Let's go down to assignability. I get this question from you guys a lot. There are 3 options: may assign and thereby be released from any further liability under this contract. If you're a listing agent, this is most likely a wholesaler or a flipper. okay, trying to flip the contract. They get released and they can wash their hands of it. They don't even need to make sure it closes. All right. They get their, 10 grand, 20 grand to walk away. And this new person is your problem. If that is the case, you have no way to go after anybody here if they don't perform. All right. Second one, may assign but not be released from liability under this contract. I do not mind this one. If I'm on the buy side, I click this one. If I'm on the listing side, I don't mind that one because they're not released from liability under the contract. It's typically these assignments from these. If they're willing to do that, they're not flippers. They're most likely they don't know how many people they're going to have to put on the title. If they don't know about their, if I'm going to have to add the husband or take off the husband or add the kid or take off the dad or whatever, right? So that's what they do. Or may not assign this contract. Always fine. If you're on the seller side, you just have to approve any kind of change. They're going to have to do it by addendum. You guys have all done that. You have to add a buyer, take a buyer off, whatever it is, do that. Or they're going to put it in their LLC, or they're going to do whatever. So if your buyer tells you, I'm not sure if I'm going to do it in my LLC or under my name, you get that a lot. Do the may assign but not be released. That way you don't have to get the seller's permission for everything. And that's particularly important when it's, like a couple of years ago, a seller's market, when they might have gotten a offer for $20,000 more the day after they accepted yours, and they would love for you to get rid of you. They can get rid of you by not approving your assignment, right? If that's the only way you can buy it, then they can get rid of you by not approving your assignment. I don't have to, it may seem harmless that you're you need to add your parents to this contract to get it financed. But if I want to get rid of you, I don't care if it's harmless. I'm not acting really in great faith, but I can get rid of you by doing that. Okay. And it is in good faith because it's everything in a contract is, once it's signed, it's a contract, legal document. And everything's a technicality. Okay. This contract is contingent upon within 30. I like that she filled in the blanks here. 30 days after the effective date, buyer obtaining approval of a conventional mortgage loan for the purchase of the property should have done one of these. Whichever one it is, whatever's on the pre-approval, not to exceed market. That's not a real number, market. She didn't really do her clients any favor by putting market. She should have put whatever they've been proposed, because if the rate goes up, that gives them an out, right? If the guy says, well, you guys can only do 5% down, so I've got to charge you points and, this much percent, then I can get out of the deal if I want to, right? Get no loan approval. Of course, you can do that anyway nowadays. Loan approval is different. You guys been around the business a few years. Remember loan commitment. You remember denial letters being necessary. Those are no longer the case. You either have loan approval or you don't. If your lender gives you a denial, that's great. You can throw that in there too, but you don't really need one now. You just don't have loan approval by the 30th day, and you let people know, okay? Which we'll get to in a minute. For a term of 30 years, that's great. I just don't like the market, and if I'm on the buy side there, I might even make it a little bit below what I did before. That way we're not approved for that rate, then we can get out. So there we go. Just pay attention to these things. This, like I said, I would like for you guys to do what this person did. They paid a lot of money for training at Coldwell Banker. So listen to them. They're filling in every blank. They should. Let's go back to the financing period. Just so you guys know, and I've covered this with you guys several times, especially when they first made the change. You have 3 things within 30 days. Always set your calendar for like the 25th day to make sure you're on this, to let them know in time. If you're the buyer's agent, you wrote this contract. Within that 30 days, you have to let them know one of 3 things. We have loan approval and we're going forward, which is awesome. They may ask to see it. That's great. Send it to them. They may be talking to your lender, which is a new thing when they made this change a couple of years ago. They made this change, and now you have given them, part of this is giving them, I'm sorry, pointing at my computer screen. Part of this is giving them permission to talk to your lender. You're giving the seller and the seller's agent permission to talk to the lender. That used to not be a thing. A lender used to be able to say, oh, can't tell you anything. It's private. But now when you sign this contract, the buyer writes this offer. They are allowing the seller and the seller's representative to talk directly to the loan officer or the lending company. And those people are now required to give them the information that they asked for, all on this contract. So if you have loan approval, you let them know and you're going forward. If you don't have loan approval, you have two options. So that's your one option for if you do have loan approval, you get loan approval and you say, we're going forward. If you do not get loan approval, you have two options. You can say, we're backing out of this deal. We don't have loan approval. We don't feel comfortable. It's been, 29 days and we don't feel good about this. We're going to send a cancellation. And then you got to send the cancellation. Or you say, we don't have loan approval, but man, we feel great about it. Of course, this is a decision your buyer makes. We feel great about it and we're going to risk it and go forward to closing. Okay. Those are your two options. Or if you don't have loan approval. So you have a total of three options. All right, let's read this. If within the loan approval period, buyer obtains loan approval, buyer shall notify seller of same in writing prior to expiration of loan approval period. Or if buyer is unable to obtain loan approval within loan approval period, but buyer is satisfied with the buyer's ability to obtain loan approval and proceed to closing, buyer shall deliver written notice to seller confirming the same prior to the expiration of the loan approval period. One thing you cannot do, I don't care how great you feel about this deal, you have the best, most approved buyer ever, and the seller's being really nice and everything's going great. You cannot not communicate. You can't not communicate. You must communicate. Okay, you must let them know one of those three things by the 30th day. On the 31st day, as Tammy knows from recent dealings, 31st, 32nd, and 33rd day, the seller can cancel your contract. If they don't like you, they don't think you're going to close, they're nervous, they're whatever, they're going to follow their instincts. But maybe they have a better backup offer. Maybe whatever, there's a reason they want to get rid of you, probably because you're not communicating, but also because maybe they have a better deal on the back burner. They can cancel with you. They do have to give you your deposit back, but they can cancel with you. Okay. And now your buyer, just because you didn't communicate, your buyer is out their inspection, their appraisal, all their hopes and dreams of their new dream house and all this stuff, because you didn't communicate with the seller that they were ready to go. Okay. So don't be less than diligent. Okay. If buyer is unable to obtain loan approval within the loan approval period, those are the two we talked about in the last paragraph. They're approved and going forward, or they're not approved but still going forward. This one is if they're unable to obtain loan approval within the loan approval period or cannot timely meet the terms of loan approval, all after the exercise of good faith and diligent effort, buyer may terminate this contract by delivering written notice of termination to seller prior to expiration of loan approval period, whereupon, provided buyer is not in default under the terms of this contract, buyer shall be refunded the deposit, thereby releasing buyer and seller from all further obligations under this contract. You guys have got to be diligent. If your buyer does not make his loan, in this case, they put 5 days for, let's scroll up here. They put 5 days. Buyer shall make application for financing within 5 days after the effective date. If they did not do that, and the seller will know now if they're paying attention there, because they can ask the lender, did they make it within 5 days? And they can say no. And you know what else? I've asked them for pay stubs for 2 weeks now, and they haven't gotten back to me. That's why I can't approve them, right? Guess what? Your buyer's in default. You've got to stay on top of your buyer and let them know, look, if you guys are in default, your deposit is at risk, and you're absolutely at risk. I don't care if you cancel whenever you cancel. You're absolutely at risk. If I have a 15-day inspection period on an as-is contract, which means I can back out my sole discretion, right? What if I didn't make my 5 days for application of financing? Am I still, if I cancel on the 12th day, am I still due to get my deposit back? They can fight you on it because it's a breach. It happened within your due diligence period, which is, for an as-is the most gracious due diligence you can have. You can walk for any reason, but you are in breach and they can fight you for your deposit if you didn't make your application for financing within 5 days. And you'll get people out there who will do that. Stay on your buyers. Make sure they're serious. Make sure they know they signed a legal document and they wired real money to escrow. What if they didn't wire their escrow within 3 days after they said they would? Can they just walk away from this deal after 10 days and they're fine? No, they breached the contract. The seller can go after their, in this case, $1,000, but the seller can go after what would normally be a $10,000 escrow on this deal, right? Because that they are in breach. If you don't make your deposit within 3 days, you're in breach. If you don't apply for your financing within 5 days, you're in breach. Guys, these are very serious things. I think buyers think they can just make offers and just pick whichever one works the best for them. That's not how life works. These are legally binding documents, and they need to understand the seriousness of what they're doing. When they put money up for a deposit, they're actually putting money up for a deposit. Yes, they usually get it back if things don't work out, but that's because of an inspection problem that they can't negotiate, or a financing problem after they've completely, what does it say? Diligent effort. They've made a diligent effort, exercise in good faith and diligent effort, right there on line 116. All after the exercise of good faith and diligent effort. Then they get their deposit back. Okay. If buyer fails to timely deliver any written notice provided for in paragraph 8 above to seller prior to the expiration of the loan approval period, then buyer shall proceed forward with this contract as though paragraph 8 above had been checked as of the effective date. Provided, however, seller may elect to terminate this contract by delivering written notice of termination to buyer within 3 days after the expiration of the loan approval period. That's day 31, 32, and 33 if you do the 30 days. Provided buyer is not in default under the terms of this contract, buyer shall be refunded the deposit, thereby releasing buyer and seller from all further obligations under this contract. So if the seller cancels you, you're fine. You get your deposit back as long as you did everything you should have done, and you're just going to yell at your agent at that point because they didn't respond. This is completely your fault that your buyer didn't get this place, and they're still going to be out every the appraisal and the inspection and anything else they spent. Plus, they probably sold their house and have nowhere else to go. Okay. If buyer has timely provided either written notice provided for in paragraph 8 above, and buyer thereafter fails to close this contract, the deposit shall be paid to the seller unless failure to close is due to seller's default or inability to satisfy other contingencies of this contract, or property-related conditions of the loan approval, specifically excluding the appraisal valuation, have not been met unless such conditions are waived by other provisions of this contract, in which event the buyer shall be refunded the deposit, thereby releasing buyer and seller from all further obligations under this contract. So if everything goes fine and buyer thereafter fails to close the contract, deposit should be paid to seller, assuming it's the buyer's fault for either not coming up with the money or whatever, but they've already had the approval. Seller's default or inability to satisfy other contingencies of this contract. Seller couldn't get rid of the tenants that they didn't, remember that we talked about checking that box and delivering a broom swept place? They couldn't get rid of the tenants, or they have a title issue, or they have, whatever, open permits that they can't resolve. And your buyer won't accept a hold harmless, which they don't have to. So that's obviously the buyer won't lose their deposit for that. And property related conditions of the loan approval have not been met unless such conditions are waived by other provisions of this contract. So if something had to be fixed or something had to be done and it's not waived elsewhere, then those are reasons also that they would get their deposit back. And they may have some sort of claim of specific performance, but I'm not a lawyer. That would be on a case-by-case basis. Make sure your sellers know, though. They can't back out at the last minute just because they decide not to sell. They can't back out at any point. Once they sign this contract, they can't back out at any point, or they definitely can be sued for specific performance, specifically if they try to back out, or particularly if they try to back out just because they changed their mind. Because, looks like my kid's not going away to college. They're going to stay at home, so we're going to keep this big house. Whatever. That's not how life works. Tammy, go ahead.
So I recently
You're on mute, I think, or I can't hear you.
Oh wait, hang on.
I heard you.
Do you hear me?
I'm the only one that can't hear.
I can hear
Hold on.
Tammy.
I wonder if you can hear any of us.
I can't hear any of you.
We could hear you.
I
hope
can
you
hear
can hear
Tammy.
me.
I can hear you both. I can hear everybody.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So I can't hear you, but I've just turned on my closed caption so I can see what you're saying.
Oh, okay. Recently on a deal, I had the seller and the buyer sent me an addendum for the repairs that they wanted done, but he sent it on the sale and purchase. So when I looked at it, I was like, this is weird because there's no place for the seller to sign. So they never corrected that. My people had pretty much fixed everything and were in agreement to it, but we wouldn't have been obligated because they sent the wrong addendum for the repairs. Am I correct or incorrect? If you can't,
I need
don't
to
worry
hear
about
you
it.
to get
We'll
this
just,
right.
yeah, we'll just discuss it another time when you can hear us.
Let me work on this for a second. Try again.
Testing, 1, 2, 3.
Perfect.
Oh, you got me? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So recently I had, that deal that fell through, it went back under contract. The buyer's agent's assistant probably did this, but he sent the repair addendum on the one that's for the sale and purchase agreement, which there's no spot for a seller to sign. And I said, you sent this on the wrong addendum. This is for the wrong contract. This is not for an as-is contract. So how would have that played out? My people had pretty much fixed everything, but would my sellers have been obligated to fix anything because he wrote it on the wrong addendum? It doesn't go with that contract.
So nobody signed. Yeah.
Only the buyers sign it because that's all that's on there. And on that sale and
So it was
purchase,
a request for repairs.
yes, but on the sale and purchase contract is a totally different contract when you come to repairs. You have to repair that stuff based on that contract. But on our as is, we did verbally agree to fix the stuff, but they didn't send the correct addendum for those things.
In that case, guys, you just have them resubmit it on the right thing. So
I
yeah,
asked them that, but they never did it.
Okay. Well, and everything's been done and everything's fine.
Yeah, everything was fine,
But
but
they got lucky.
yeah,
Because
exactly.
you get that. I've received that before on an as is. I've received a request for repairs. I'm like, no, you know what? That's not a real thing. Send me an addendum.
Yeah, it's not even. Yeah,
Mm-hmm. No, you did fine. You should have asked for what you asked for. So you did fine. And it turned out okay, but no, that's not the right thing to do. You guys have to pay attention. We're professionals. And whether an assistant did it or not, you're responsible for what an assistant. You need a different assistant or hire a professional TC or something if that's what you're going to do, because that's important. That's probably day 2 of TC school is make sure it's on the right addendum for the right contract.
they're like, oh, we've never. They acted like it was like new information to them, and they are actually fairly seasoned people. And I'm like, that's strange.
I've had agents do that too before, and basically they use that as like a negotiations, like here's the repair request, and I think they're doing it to get it in time during the inspection period before you agreed. So I think that at least their mindset is that they would be able to cancel if you didn't agree to those repairs during that time frame. But Ryan's shaking his head, and we know that you have to.
Yeah, because you. I don't know. You would do the same thing, but you just use a blank addendum. You would write all that same stuff that he had on that.
It's redundant. It's a waste of time. Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree. I don't use it.
Yes, and they probably are 2 seasoned. They're probably from back when everybody used the more standard contract and did that. But you can't, and in that case, it would extend that. It would extend that inspection. We're negotiating or we're talking about the repairs that we need done. And now you've got to figure out when you get that. This is why we don't use that. You've got to figure out now as the seller how much all that's going to cost, everything that they're asking for, and whether it's a general repair or cosmetic repair, and that's why we don't use those. It's nonsense. Whereas they can send you You know, what do you guys say when somebody said they want this fix and that fix, and this faucet on the side of the house is it might leak one day soon, and this and that, right? All this stuff, and you say, you know, what do you want? Tell me what you actually want. Send me what you want in repairs or a concession, and send me a cancellation. I'll see which one my seller signs. That's what you say to get them. That gets the ball rolling right there. But no, sending someone or letting guys, just so you know, it's day 7 of our 7-day inspection period, and I send and Tammy's got the listing, and I've got the buyer, and I send Tammy an email saying, my buyers, we found this and this, and we want this fixed. We want the AC coils cleaned, and we want this and this. Did I do anything? Did I do anything to help my client there? No, we're on the last day. I've got to send. I say we're going to cancel if we don't want this. Guys, when you ask for repairs, you and you guys need to hold people's feet to the fire. Don't just go back and forth with nonsense. Say, send me a cancellation and send me that, and I'll see which one the seller signs. And if you're on the buyer side and you want to play hardball, say I'm going to send you an addendum saying we want $3,000 or $10,000 or whatever. We want a new roof, or we want this, or we want that, and I'll send you the addendum for that, and I'll send you a cancellation, and whichever one your seller wants to sign, they can sign. Let's get this ball rolling. But you've got to send, guys, on your last day, you've got to offer a cancellation. You don't have to send the cancellation necessarily, but let them know if we don't get this $2,500, we're canceling. Consider us canceled. That's in writing. That's fine.
Or at least discuss that with your buyer, because that's what I tell them. I can play hardball and put that on here, or we can wait and see. Or are you willing to do this?
Yeah, guys, I just want to be clear. Yeah, make sure your buyer approves all this stuff, or your seller approves all this stuff, because we're not just cowboys. They just spent money on an application. They may have already they've spent definitely on an inspection, and they may have already paid for the appraisal. So let's make sure. Yeah, don't just be a cowboy, but make sure your buyer understands what you're doing and how you're negotiating for them.
I mean, I'll hold off on the cancellation and see how they respond. And then if they don't respond, then we'll decide if we want to cancel like same day and send the cancellation.
Yeah, Tammy, I'm talking about, I have you guys call me at 4:00 on the last day and say, well, does this run out at 5 o'clock? No, 5 p.m. is nowhere on this contract.
No,
it's 11:59. Okay. And so, let them know that, by the end of that, if you're doing this last minute, you've got to threaten cancellation if they don't agree to something. If they won't communicate with you or whatever. A lot of times it's 4 o'clock. A lot of times it's 4 o'clock on the last day, but I sent them a thing 2 days ago and they haven't responded. I sent them a request for repairs 2 days ago and they haven't responded. And when I say request for repairs, do not use that form, request for repairs, unless you're using the standard contract. I'm just saying a request for repairs is, you can send an addendum with it, but most likely you're just going to send an email saying, we like this fixed and that fixed. What do you guys see what your sellers say about that kind of thing, which is fine if you've got a couple of days left on your inspection period. But if it's getting down to the last minute, that's when you have to say, and if they don't get some kind of relief here, we're going to cancel. And so let's send a thing in extending the inspection period for a day. Send in a thing doing that. Say, we want to talk about this. We're going to need another day, or we're going to cancel. But they do need to know that you're going to cancel if they don't sign that one of those two forms, extending it by a day, or your addendum for repairs, or whatever. Just make sure you're covered with. Let them know that if this doesn't get signed, we consider us canceled. Okay. Or if I don't hear back from you by 10 o'clock, I'm going to bed at 10:30. I'm going to send you a cancellation.
So if you send a cancellation on the last day and they don't sign it on that day, you still have canceled, correct?
Yeah, you send it. Yeah, they may never sign it. You've seen people never sign it. You get people won't release people's escrow because they're mad, even though they deserve it back. Yeah. Maybe it's the third time people have gone under contract with them and walked out on the last day of inspection. And they're mad or whatever. Or they're just not available or whatever, it's fine. You sent it. That's all that matters. You document that you sent it. That's all. You can't make people respond to it. All right. Any questions on that? I guess there are questions. Yes.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, Win. Yes.
Yeah, so we're talking about the loan approval period. Is this about, is it like it should be the final approval or conditional approval counts?
It's always going to be conditional. It's almost always going to be conditional approval by the 30th day. Sometimes it'll be final approval. And sometimes you're like this, these people got 30 days and they also have 30 days to close. So they got right up until closing. It's not ideal. Our agent here should have come back at 20 days or 25 days or something like that to give some kind of approval period to them for real, because they don't really have an approval period because they're going to close in 30 days. I don't know if you saw this, but it's from the 16th to the 16th, which in April to May literally is 30 days, because April only has 30 days. So it's the loan approval period doesn't mean anything. So it will be final approval on this, but a lot of times it's just conditional approval. They still have a one or two conditions to clear before closing, but usually it's, because of the date of this thing, I've got to get one more pay stub, or I've got to get one more thing, or, whatever.
Okay, I'm asking because sometimes seller agent asks for like a 20 days approval period. So if you get conditional approval by the 20th day, but then they cannot get the final approval, is buyer able to get the deposit back?
No. Nope. You got to let them know. If you agree to 20 days here, like that's what I was just telling you, our agent should have made them go 20 days here. If you agree to 20 days here, you got to let them know whatever you have after 20 days. And if you're not comfortable moving forward, then don't. I mean, that's the bottom line. No, if you agree to 20 days, then you agree to 20 days. And a lot of lenders aren't going to be too happy with that. But, that you put them in that box. But they realize if they got to close in 30 days, then, 20, 25 days. And again, if you put 30 and somebody comes back at 20 on a case like this, I would try to negotiate for 25 if I were the buyer's agent.
Okay, thank you.
If I were the listing agent here, I would have said 20. And if I were the buyer's agent, I would have said, okay, 25. I would talk to the lender about it, make sure 25 was good.
Thanks.
And I will also ask the lender, what about 20 in case they won't come off of that? But they probably would have agreed to 25. Obviously, they agreed to 30. So these people would have agreed to 25 for sure. But they left it at 30, which is great. It's if you guys were writing this contract, that's what I would suggest, even though you have a 30-day close. But 30 here too gives you all the room in the world to back out to the last minute. So our agent shouldn't have let that happen, but they did.
Okay.
Let's move forward if no other questions. All right, closing costs, fees, and charges. This is where people put this stuff. Now, when the thing changes here in July/August, whenever it's changing, you guys really need to read these closely. Make sure when you receive an offer, you read these closely. And I'm telling you guys, as buyers agents, when you submit an offer, write it here and then write it again in the additional terms. Don't try to trick people, or don't think, especially when you guys write some long thing here, up to 3% toward buyer's closing costs, prepaid, blah, 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 blah. And it gets tiny, tiny, tiny writing. You guys have all seen this. Some of us are old and we can't read all that. So restate it, please, in the bottom additional terms. Costs to be paid by buyer. This is where a lot of times you see their, because they go ahead and put it in here, since they're the buyer's agent, a lot of times you'll see their transaction fee here, $5.95 to Keller Williams or whatever it is. Title evidence and insurance, 15 days. I love that this agent's filling in the blanks. Seller shall designate closing agent, pay for owner's policy and charges, and buyer shall pay the premium for buyer's lender policy and charges for closing services related to the lender's policy, endorsements, and loan closing, which amounts shall be paid to buyer to closing agent, by buyer to closing agent, or such other providers as buyer may select. Okay. So you guys have, I'm sure you've had people complain that you've had sellers complain that they have to pay for the buyer's title insurance policy, because a lot of places in the country, including some places in Florida, like Miami, that's not normal. It's normal to us here. We think it's normal. It could be argued, look, it's my property. I'm going to make sure that you have clear title by paying for your title insurance policy, right? If I'm going to sell something to you, I'm going to make sure you have clear title. Other places say, you know what? It's the buyer's insurance policy for their title that they're buying. I wouldn't go renew my insurance on my car if I was going to sell it to you. So why am I doing that, right? So it can be argued either way. So just so you know, you're going to get blowback from some people. Somebody comes down here from Maryland or New York or something, they're going to say, no, buyer pays for insurance and for title insurance. That's just not the way it is here. So, and the seller also, because they're paying for the title insurance, they're also picking the title insurance, closing agent title insurance provider for that. The second option is what it's like most places. Buyer shall designate closing agent and pay for the owner's policy and charges. And obviously it makes sense they're paying for their services related to buyer's lender policy. And this is because it's done differently in Miami. This is the way they click this box. Survey. At least 5 days prior to closing date, buyer may, at buyer's expense, have the real property surveyed and certified by a registered Florida surveyor. If seller has a survey covering the real property, copy shall be furnished to buyer and closing agent with 5 days after the effective date. If you have a recent survey, you should provide it. This is in every contract, guys. And so somebody who just bought their property cash or whatever they did and has a survey, they should provide it to the buyer. Are you in breach if you have one and you did not provide it to the buyer within 5 days? Is your seller in breach if they don't? Yes, they are. They're supposed to do it. It's on the contract. Is anyone ever going to know if they actually have one? No. But if they go around bragging that they had one and they didn't give it over to them, then they were in breach. Home warranty. Typically, obviously, the buyer is going to ask the seller to do this. Otherwise, they'll just do it. Or they could work it into their deal, I guess. But the seller at closing, usually the seller shall pay for a home warranty plan issued by American Home Shield or whoever it is at a cost not to exceed whatever it is, usually $500 to $1,000 here. Obviously, you see this a lot more during a buyer's market. We saw none of it during a seller's market. And if you did see it, you just marked through it and sent it back. All right, these are special assessments. These are for public, full liens, public body. Public body does not include condo or homeowner association. These are not your special assessments for your condos. These are public assessments, which is typically if you live on a road with only 8 other houses and you guys pay for the road to be paved, you all take your part in that. I just saw one you guys had last month. They're very rare, but they do have them. You guys had one last month that was for something, and it was some kind of stormwater thing, and it was, $126 a year or something like that. And that is what's here. Okay, and that's going to be typically not very much, and it's going to be paid then. Here's all the disclosures. These are all. That's the beginning of the disclosures. FIRPTA, you guys realize what FIRPTA is. We've had classes on that. If you need a quick reminder, this is the money that the government takes from the seller. Seller's going to have to pay taxes at some point. The government would rather hold their tax money. They have no way to chase them. If you or I, any of us who are American citizens, do not pay our taxes, they will throw us in jail to freeze our assets. But if you are a Canadian citizen or any other country, they can't throw you in jail. They can't freeze your assets. They can't do anything to you. Except what you have in the U.S. And so they would rather hold your money, which is very smart, hold your money and give you back what's left when you do file, or you have an accountant file 8288 form, which states, that's an affidavit that states you're only going to owe this much, and you get your money back a little bit faster, but they're still going to hold what you're going to owe. As a buyer's agent, you do need to make sure that FIRPTA is being withheld if it applies, and you just have to ask the listing agent, does FIRPTA apply? You ask the title company, does FIRPTA apply? They'll know because they're doing all the paperwork for it. And if it does, then make sure that they withhold it. That's all you need to make sure you see it on the closing statement, and your buyer will never be held responsible for it. Crazy law, I think, that says that your buyer can be held responsible for anything to do with this, because it shouldn't be, but that's the way it is. Seller disclosure. Seller knows of no facts materially affecting the value of the real property which are not readily observable and which have not been disclosed to buyer, except as provided in the preceding sentence. Seller extends and intends no warranty and makes no representation of any type, either express or implied, as the physical condition or history of the property, except as otherwise disclosed in writing. Seller has received no written or verbal notice from any governmental entity or agency as to a currently uncorrected building, environmental, or safety code violation. If you find out about this, this is to knowledge. Seller knows. This is to their best of their knowledge. This is not, we guarantee, seller warrants that there is no, they don't. To the best of their knowledge, they don't know of anything materially affecting the value of the home. Like we talked about recently, I had a roof leak 2 years ago. I fixed it, fixed everything to do with it. Do I need to disclose that? No, I fixed the roof, right? Anything that I fixed, there was a hole in my drywall, I fixed it. There was this or that, right? Anything, and holes in drywall are usually readily observable, so it's not that big of a deal anyway. These are things that are not readily observable, materially affect the value of the house. Does a seller have to do a seller's property disclosure form? They do not. Their lawyer, if they talk to a lawyer, they're going to tell them not to, because they're given a lot of information that they don't know. They're typically are going to, people like to tell more than what they actually know, and they're going to expound on some things. They're going to put that they're on sewer, even though they don't know they're on, because they don't know they're on septic for whatever reason. There are people who don't have any idea whether they're on sewer or septic. And things like that. So an attorney's going to tell them not to do that, and you don't have to do that. And you see a lot of them, they say, if it's an investor, seller never occupied property. That's a perfectly good thing to do. They still have to disclose if something's wrong with the house, okay, or the property. They still have to disclose it in writing. And so you guys don't just do a walkthrough and say, yeah, just so you know, it has a small leak in the roof right here that it's active. You can't do that. You have to tell them in writing. I mean, it's great that you showed them, but you have to tell them in writing. All right. This one only had a 5-day inspection period. If left blank, it's 15. So if you're on the, if you're reviewing this from the listing side, make sure they fill this in at the number that you want. Everything's negotiable. But if they don't fill it in at all, it's 15. Go through this real quick with you guys, because I still always get questions on this. Within which to have such inspections of the property performed as buyer shall desire. Do they have to have an inspection? No, not an as is. They do not have to have an inspection. Can they back out for any reason in their own sole discretion? Yes, they can back out for any reason. What if it's just that their dog died and they were buying this house so their dog would have a big backyard? They can back out. They can back out for any reason whatsoever during that 5 days in this contract. Up to 15, I mean, I've seen longer ones for weird deals, but usually 5 to 15. Right now, it's usually 5 to 10. Market's not that crazy. There was a time recently where we needed 15 because inspectors couldn't get to anything because they were so busy. So yes, absolutely any reason within this time period, they can back out and get their deposit back. And I get a question a lot. They do not have to have had, I get you guys get mad. You've got a seller, you've got a listing, and the buyer backed out on the second day. They didn't even get an inspection, Ryan. They don't have to. They can back out for any reason. They can just change their mind. They can find that the house down the street became available again. They came back on market. Whatever it is, they can back out. Here's all the boilerplate stuff: buyer default, seller default, dispute resolution. All this stuff, read through that. If you have any questions later, you can ask me. Force majeure, if a hurricane comes and blows out the house, what happens? Prorations, credits, risk of loss, 1031 exchange. There's a 1031 exchange addendum. All it says is that either party will cooperate. In fact, it says it right here now. In all reasonable respects, it doesn't cost them any money or time. It just says we'll cooperate. We're not going to withhold the reason you want that is in case somebody tries to get out of a deal by saying, oh, we're not signing anything. We're not obligated to sign anything. We're not going to participate in your 1031. Well, they have to if they sign this now, because it says here, if either buyer or seller wish to enter a like-kind exchange under section 1031 of the IRS code, the other party shall cooperate in all reasonable respects to effectuate the change. It's not reasonable to withhold signing a document that doesn't affect me. We're back to FERPTA again, which we talked about. Okay, this one, they clicked all the right boxes here: homeowners association, appraisal contingency, etc. They got 10,000 in concessions, but this is completely not necessary, offering 460 for the property. This is also none of this is the buyer is the agent's husband, okay? And the seller agrees to pay 10,000 in concessions are the only things that need to be written here out of this. Don't write too much, okay? That's not the right way to write this, by the way, but they wrote it. That's fine. They've disclosed it. That is a reasonable person can understand that they're disclosing that. This is new, relatively new here, the conveyance to foreign buyers. They're saying that they're not one of these people from one of these countries, and they're going to sign an affidavit that says that at closing.
Hey, Ryan,
Yes.
did they include a personal interest disclosure?
They don't have to if they did this.
Okay, that's all you need if it's in there. You don't
Yeah,
need to.
you disclosed it. That is reasonable disclosure.
So you would use that if you maybe forgot to put it in the contract and you wanted to notify them in writing?
That's the more professional thing to do is to do that, yes. But you should definitely do it. But it's in the contract. It's part of the contract. Anything.
When I'm on the listing side, I usually put it as an attachment so that it's already disclosed there too.
Perfect. You put an attachment. It's on the MLS. It's been same as a seller's property disclosure. As a buyer's agent, check the attachments. Make sure you have all that stuff and share that with your buyer. I've seen them put on there and nobody ever looked at them. And then they say, oh, well, we didn't know this, we didn't know that. Well, I put it on MLS as an attachment and it's a seller's property disclosure. It's pretty important. As far as disclosing this, it's not as important, but it's still very important to disclose any interest in the property, personal interest in a property. So the buyer's agent's husband, I've never seen that exact wording before, but that's great.
And also the way they wrote the repair thing up there, that's kind of a red flag for the lender, saying that they realize that the home needs work. You wouldn't put that on the contract because the lender might say,
yeah, Tammy, this agent is right out of school, I think. She is filling in every blank like she learned about it, and she doesn't think she's too good for that like you guys do. So she's probably right out of school. But to put something like that, from years of experience that that's not a good idea.
She did not. Sign. So 10,000 what? I'm going to give them like 10,000 pieces of grass. Like there's no dollar signs.
See, you never know when you're running into Angie out there too.
Yeah.
So be
I
very
would
careful.
that all up.
That's yeah, Angie would. She'd give him 10,000 paper clips.
the only reason I'm bringing this up because I don't know if we have new agents on the Zoom.
Oh, we absolutely do, Tammy.
And they're seeing that and saying like, oh, so that's why I'm kind of bringing that up.
Yeah, and that's why I do these reviews. This is a little bit for you guys, mostly for the newer people, but a little bit of a reminder for you guys. And I wanted to go through somebody else's now instead of writing one, do this and do that. I wanted to kind of pick at somebody else's. And I can tell by when you guys have a problem with somebody and you send me a contract and you send the contract, I can usually tell what kind of agent wrote the contract, and this one is a newer agent, doesn't do a lot of business, or they would know this because they would have been, they would have realized, and Angie, what are they offering for the property? Just 460,000 of something. So the inspection period, my dad used to say, you want $10? And then he would kick me with his knee and be like, there's $1, there's $2. No. So I always had to be careful asking him for $10. The inspection period will be 5 days. Buyer is aware the house needs some work and the reason for the price being offered. It's just ridiculous. No, we don't put comments like that on here. You don't have to restate the purchase price, because now if I change it up there, I got to change it down here, and I probably wasn't even looking for that. I do like that they put the 10,000 in concessions here instead of trying to hide it on page 3 under the seller, or page 4, whatever page that is, under the seller price paid. They should have put it there too, but not in concessions. The lender's probably going to want that change too. I don't know if they ever did by addendum, but they're probably going to want that change too, to say, in toward closing costs and prepaids, or they'll want it to say something else probably. So when you're a buyer and you're writing something like this, make sure you write it correctly for the lender so that we don't have a bunch of addendum. I mean, you don't have to, just, it'll save you work. Ask what the lender wants to see. Also make sure that your lender can accept that, because I've seen you guys do it for, $12,000 and your lender says that's over the amount that we can't even take that much, right? And so you think you've negotiated a better deal for your client. You've even paid a little bit more for the property. This happened recently with one of you guys. Their client paid, actually we were on the good side of this. The other agent from the other company messed up because we didn't know what to do with the extra money because they gave too much of their commission or they did something anyway that the buyer couldn't take all the money. The lender wouldn't let the buyer take all the money. So there was extra money laying around at closing, and they paid more for it than they would have because they were getting more back. They should have just paid less for the property, right? So, but they didn't understand how much the lender could take or would allow them to take. So always talk to the lender first, see how much they can take, first of all, and then how they want it worded. All right. But typically you're going to say seller agrees to pay up to $10,000 in buyer's prepaids and closing costs. Because why are we doing $10,000 in repair concessions if we're paying for, we'll just pay $450, right? But you want that money to go toward closing, so it's less cash. They're already only doing 5% down. Now they've got 10,000 toward that 5%. Okay, that's what they want to do, so they can say closing costs and prepaids. All right, they signed it. This guy signed it. Everybody signed it on the 4/15. But they initialed it on the 16th, which is weird. So I don't know what happened there. This guy signed it on the 16th, so it's legit. All right, here's they sent their approval. The pre-approval was only up to 450. They could have gotten another one. Not the best thing in the world. Here we go. They did do a seller's disclosure. Perfect. Signed by everyone. They did a HOA disclosure. Great. That's all that's on this form. Yes, Daryl Hunt.
And sometimes if you have too much commission or concessions, you can do a interest buy down. Did you say that? You might have.
I did not.
Missed it. Okay, because I've done that in the past too. If I have too much in commission or in concessions, and the lender says no, you can't. I do an interest rate buy down, so that's worked before.
Okay, you're doing them a great favor. That way, they're getting to use the money. That's good. Yep. That is another way they can use it if the lender allows it. Rakesh.
Hey Ryan, good morning. On the salary disclosure, if it is like a bank owned or property where somebody never lived in, and we often get, hey, they never lived in, we still insist on a no disclosure, or you?
Insist on a no disclosure.
Yeah, I guess there is still a disclosure, even though if you haven't lived in the property, you still have to.
No, we don't care. They don't have to fill one out. They don't have to fill one out that says they never lived there and they're not telling you anything. Just the fact is that they still have to disclose. Just because there's a form for something doesn't mean they have to fill it out. I can tell you, we just went through a state audit and they don't ask for those because it's not required. And if you have an attorney, your attorney is going to tell you, don't sign that. Don't fill that out. They're going to say disclose everything that is of material value to the home or affects the material value of the home, but do not fill out a form because you're filling out a bunch of stuff you don't know anything about. I don't know if you've seen how detailed the forms are, but you're filling out, stuff about the plumbing and stuff about this and that. And has anything ever happened? If you forget something, then you lied about it, right? You forgot that you had to get the septic tank pumped, 2 years ago. Then you lied about it or whatever, right? Or you thought it was 2 years ago, but it was really 5 years ago because time flies. And now you lied about when you had it pumped last, right? So if you don't fill out a form, you can't lie. And also you won't tell something, or you only have to tell things that are of material value and not readily observable. So for instance, if my ceiling fan is falling down off the ceiling, that's readily observable. I don't have to tell that.
Right.
Okay? But if it falls off every month and hits somebody in the head, then I've got to tell somebody that I've got an ongoing problem with my ceiling fan. Okay.
Yeah.
So, yes. Are you good, Rakesh? You don't
Just
have to have that form. You don't have to have that form. We'd like to see.
Ryan, one follow-up question, Ryan.
Yes, sir.
I have seen where a property I was dealing with, the bank, it was a bank owned or short sale, and they had one of their own form which had its own kind of terms and conditions that which override the standard or purchase agreement. Is that also something common in Florida we have to sign or no?
Let me tell you something about bank owned and REOs and stuff like that. They're going to jerk you around quite a bit. They don't follow any of the rules they do that we consider rules, and they don't have to. They will not give you HOA disclosures. They will not do that. So those are excluded from things. I was going to tell you, we got audited by the state 2 weeks ago now, and they did not ask for one seller's property disclosure. Because it's not required. The HOAs, stuff like that, banks won't play ball with those things. They won't give you one. There's lots of things they won't do, and you have to just accept whatever thing they give you. And the trade-off from that is the great price that your client's getting. But it's a lot of times it's you sight unseen, or you get one chance to look at it, and 3 days for an inspection, or 1 day for an inspection, or do your inspection before you make an offer. They've seen that before. So they play by their own rules, and you want it or not, pal. That's kind of how they are.
Yeah.
Give us an offer or don't. So don't be surprised by that.
Okay, thanks. Good.
They play hardball. Yes, Angie.
The MLS attachments have also been a great way for me to explain our value as buyer's agents too, because it's information that they can't just get off of Zillow. So that's definitely included in my buyer's presentation. When you like a home that you like, when you find a home that you like, whether it's on Zillow or the MLS that I'm sending you, send me the information and I'll get you more details on it. Send me the address and I'll get you more details on it, like the seller property disclosure that you won't be able to find on your own, HOA documents, and all those types of things. So it's really important that you review those before you show a house. And I even like to send them to the clients before I show them the house, because a lot of times there's something on there that rules it out and we don't have to waste our time going out to see them.
Awesome. Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. And a lot of times you can find things that you don't see on the pictures and stuff like that they love these pictures. And then obviously they don't show you a picture of some of the things that they don't want to disclose. So great. And that's great. And think about that as a listing agent too. Put your HOA docs up there, put stuff out there that's going to help buyers agents. You're helping the industry and you're helping yourself. Because we're going to have to prove our value, and it helps to do those things. And you're saving everybody time, and saving, if you've got a seller who's got to go to Starbucks every time the house shows, you're saving them time. You're doing a better job for your seller too. Tammy.
So are you saying we should not have our sellers fill out the seller's disclosure now?
I'm not saying that. I would not say that. A lawyer would tell them that. Probably.
Oh, okay. Okay.
That's what Nishad used to tell us all the time. He's like, I won't let a client do it. No, if they're going to do it, just tell them, be sure about the things that you're saying here. No, I like to have one.
Okay.
Like Tammy said, it's going to save them time and stuff. And if people don't like something, then they don't like something. That's perfectly fine. Some people have triggers from their past life. Nobody was born yesterday that's doing this. They've got to have to have been around a little bit, right? And so they have a trigger. That's why you have people who are unreasonable about all kinds of stuff. I don't want a FHA loan, or I don't want a this, or I don't want a that, or I'm not doing a 15-day inspection. Last time they waited till the 14th day, and whatever it is, right? I want a cash deal only. They've got a trigger from something that happened to them in the past. So if somebody sees something on a disclosure form, and they're going, oh, they've had problems with their septic system. Oh, remember that nightmare we had back in Oklahoma? Oh my gosh, right? Or whatever it was, they might have a trigger and completely turn them off from the thing. Maybe the septic system is perfect, but they just don't want a septic system, which they should have been able to see on. They won't see that on Zillow probably, but they'll see it on. You'll be able to tell them that. So those are the kind of things. Yeah, I mean, yeah, have them fill it out. Just tell them, don't talk about stuff you don't know. Just be happy to use that don't know box, right? Just don't, if you don't know, people love to guess at stuff. I don't know why. I think I did that back. No, don't guess. This is important. Any other questions? I apologize for my audio problems earlier. This is a new computer, and it's the first time I've used the audio on it. So, but it's great. Any other questions before we go about anything? Daryl Hunt from Williamsburg.
Of course, I have to chime in. I did a couple things this week that some people might want to do in their neighborhoods. we had a very first time night market in Williamsburg, which it was a volunteer market this time. We had actually 25 vendors and I was the only realtor. So I set up a nice table and I shared it on Facebook and everything. And I met a bunch of neighbors and gave away some free lunches with Daryl, and had a really good time. Actually, it was Friday night, which is kind of weird. And it was 6 to 10, although I left at like 9:30 because we actually had live music there and everything. So it was really cool. We had a ton of people. A ton of people showed up at like what, 6:30 to 9 or so, and just tons of vendors around the area, and arts and crafts people, and a natural food booth, which I bought some peaches from them because they were really good. And before it all got started, I walked around all the booths to introduce myself to everyone, all the vendors there, gave them my card, of course, with my notebook thing attached to it. So I met everybody and everybody knows me there. So I had a really good time. That was one thing I did. Here's another thing that you can do in your neighborhood. Yesterday, I try to take around 7,500 steps a day. That's just my new thing to do, to exercise and get the stress relief. So this time I chose to take a plastic bag and a grabber, I guess that's what you call it, to pick up garbage. So I walked my whole neighborhood, well, not the whole neighborhood, but I walked around some of the main streets and picked up garbage and everything. And I shared that on the Facebook page. Everybody freaking loved it. So it's getting my name out again to the neighborhood, and they're liking it. And actually I'm establishing now Friday, let me see, it's a Friday and Saturday. Yeah, Friday and Saturday morning, I asked for volunteers to walk down Central Florida Parkway, like the part that faces Williamsburg. And I asked for volunteers to help me pick up garbage. Super simple. Everybody loved it again. So just get out there and do stuff. That's all it is. Super simple.
That is fantastic, Daryl. That is awesome. You guys, there's always something you can do. Absolutely always something you can do. And Daryl, I love that. That is great. That is how you plant yourself in the neighborhood as the go-to guy. I love that. I love the going around to all the vendors, introducing yourself. That's wonderful. Lots of opportunities out there for you guys. We talked a couple of weeks ago about getting out there to all the new builds in your neighborhood or your farm area, the area you want to be your neighborhood that you sell in. I haven't seen you guys doing that or putting it on your social media, but I would love to. Those of you who are doing Steve Black's thing, be sure you let me know when you start using that stuff, and you'll get your fee that we talked about waived. Oh my gosh, there's chat. I haven't even looked in chat. Best time inspection according to closing date, and how many days usually required? We see anything from 3 to 15 on inspection days. It just depends on what they'll accept. You get as many as you think the seller will accept. That gives you time to get in there and negotiate it and do everything else. But if they're, some sellers are, don't want to give a lot of days, if that's a hot button for them. Everything, I'll give you guys a speech I always give you. Everything on this form is negotiable. Everything, even buyers and sellers' names change sometimes. Everything on here is negotiable. So there's no term that's more important. And I usually, if I have a bunch of new agents, I ask, what's the most important thing on here? What's the most important number on this contract? And usually they say the purchase price. It's all of them. Anything can be somebody's hot button. Anything can be the most important thing on this contract. And you'll see somebody, and you'll see people. Obviously, this seller had never had a problem with escrow before because they just accepted $1,000 like it was nothing. Well, it is nothing. So they accepted it like it wasn't a big deal. But you guys will have some sellers that say, "Oh, I'm not doing that." Tammy, your last sellers with your buyers that you got rid of there, would they have
the second deal? We're 10,000 now in escrow.
Yeah, of
and
course.
A 21-day loan approval.
Yeah, dead serious about it, right? You're not going to tie me up for a long time with no money, no skin in the game, because they've been hurt before. It's just like dating. They've been hurt before, so they've got certain things they're looking for, certain red flags they don't want to see. Juliana.
Yes. In regard to the inspection days, I had a previous transaction. We closed, everything went well, but they did the inspections and then they sent a request for repairs. We did not get to agree until like maybe a week or two after they did the inspections. And I was asking for an extension, and the other realtor said that we didn't need to do an extension because they had already completed the inspections and we were just negotiating. So
Well,
do we need to
your client
extend?
wasn't protected. Your client wasn't protected. The inspection period is
Right.
not just for the inspection. The inspection period is to get everything worked out before you decide to move forward. So no, you weren't protected during that time. They could have cut off negotiations and kept your deposit.
Right, okay, yes, thank
All
you.
Yeah, we would have fought them on it, but they could have done that. So you're not protected during that.
We
So
need to
yes, when
complete
you
that
have to-
extension, right?
Pardon me?
We would have had to complete the extension for those inspections, for the
Yes,
inspection
you
days.
should have extended the inspection period.
Mhm.
And if they
Yeah.
refuse to do that, say, then we're not covered after our 7th day or 10th day, whatever day that was. And you have to look, this is all negotiating. You guys are
Right.
negotiating all the time, whether you know it or not. You're negotiating all the time. And anybody, you know who wins a negotiation? The one who's willing to walk away. Any party who's willing to walk away is who wins a negotiation. And if you're not willing to walk away, then you don't have the cards. And so you've got to be prepared to present that as an option at all times, guys, buyer side or seller side. Look, send me your request for a concession or repairs and send me a cancellation. I'll see which one the seller wants to sign. And if you're on the buyer side, be willing, if you want to win negotiations, be willing to say, look, we want these repairs made, or we want, $3,200. And I'm sending you a cancellation as well. Whichever one your seller wants to sign is fine with us. We got to move forward. All right. And that you'll see the results that you get from that. I don't think I've ever had the wrong one signed. Yes. Juliana.
Perfect, thank you.
All
Thank you.
right. So you were not covered, just so you know. You got lucky. There is an argument for getting your deposit back. If they're playing along with you, then they're acting because there's a legal thing that I'm not going to even try to remember the name of. I'm not a lawyer. But if you go forward for the same reason of this, if you go forward like there is no breach, there was no breach. You're forgiven for that. If you go past the acceptance day of this contract, this one had to be signed by the 16th. If they had not signed it till the 17th, but everybody was still making deposits and going back and forth talking about the inspection and doing all this, it's still a valid contract. You have to, in fact, with the 5 days I talked to you guys about the 5 days to make the thing. If they are still going back and forth with you, asking you for your loan approval, and they didn't notice that the 5 days was an issue, they can't go back later and say it was the 5 days. They can say it's that you weren't giving them pay stubs this whole time, but they can't say it was back to the 5 days. If someone goes forward with the contract as though there has been no breach, then there has been no breach that can be done. Okay. So if you didn't make your escrow within 3 days, they can't come back after the 43rd day and say, oh, your escrow was late, so we'll get your deposit. No, you've gone forward with it this whole time, never said a thing. It's been forgiven. Okay.
Okay,
So-
so question. So if because I sent them, I told them, send me an extension so we can move forward or continue negotiating, which they didn't. And then I also sent a
Well-
cancellation and they didn't want to sign it. In that case, what do we do as a listing agent? How do we force them, or how do we make them
Well,
comply?
You can't force anybody to do anything. So tell me what you did now. So tell me on the dates that you did this.
So they did the inspection and sent
You're the
request for
listing agent?
repair. I was a listing agent, yes.
Okay, they did the inspection and did what else?
Sent the request for repairs, and they were asking for concessions and stuff, and so we didn't agree to it. We didn't come to an agreement within those days that we had the inspection days.
Okay.
So we're gonna continue negotiating, but I requested that they fill out an extension or
You
to
didn't
cancel.
need to do that. You didn't need to do that. They should have done that on their own. That's what I was telling you on your deal. You should have done that.
So
on
in that
theirs-
case, I should have just sent a cancellation.
Yeah. If you wanted to cancel. But they're out of, or you can wait for them to do loan approval and you get their deposit because they didn't. You don't have to make any repairs, guys. When you sign, when your seller signs an as is, the good news is they don't have to make any repairs. They don't have to. They can agree to, but they don't have to. And on the buyer side, you're not entitled to any repairs. You can ask for them, but you're not entitled to them. Okay. You also can back out for any reason. That's the trade-off. You can back out for any reason whatsoever and get your deposit back. So once they went past their, let's say they had 7 days and they went past that 7 days, if you're negotiating with them and going back and forth, then you're acting like it didn't happen. But if you're telling them, no, we won't do it, and they still didn't do anything, then that's on them. They asked for repairs. You said no. They weren't entitled to anything. So if their 7 days runs out, say they ask you for repairs on the 5th day, and on the 6th day you say no, and they let the 7th day go, then they're on the hook. But they'll probably find somebody to get off on a loan approval. Okay. I hope that answers your question. But yeah, after the 7th day, you don't send them you cannot on the seller side send them a cancellation after they let the inspection period go. You can't cancel. There's no reason to cancel. They can cancel, but after that 7th day, they won't get their money back because they're not even canceling for a loan approval at that point. So you can't cancel as a seller if they go past their inspection period, even if you had some disagreements before. You can't cancel on it. They still have the right up to that 30th day to provide you a loan approval. Any questions on that? Does that make sense? All right. I'll take that as a yes. Any other questions before we go? Everybody good? Daniel, you good? Awesome. All right. All right, everybody. We will see you next week. Have a great week. I'm glad you guys all came. Hopefully you guys learned something. I learned a lot from you. And I will see you next week. Bye, everybody.
Thanks.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to today's open forum. Today's open forum, we're going to talk about the as-is contract. Normally, I would take a blank one and kind of fill it out with you guys. We have done that before. Today, I just picked a random one from our collection, back office collection here, and we're going to go through it. This one, we were the listing brokerage on this one. This was written by someone at Coldwell Banker, as you can tell from the logo. And we're going to go over this contract and kind of pick it apart and see what they did well and what they didn't do well. Before we begin, do you guys have any questions on anything that we need to talk about before we do this? Anything exciting? Nope. Great. Let's talk about this. So here we are. This is an as-is contract, residential contract for sale and purchase. These are FAR/BAR forms, as you guys know. We call them FAR/BAR. Florida Association of Realtors and the Florida Bar. So that's your FAR and your BAR. They come up with these forms so anyone can fill them out. Any licensed real estate agent can fill out these forms. They make it very simple, so we can't really mess it up unless you start writing your own legalese on these. So as long as you're filling in blanks, you're pretty legal. The point, though, is, and I get this all the time, you guys say, hey, Ryan, will you review this contract for me? If I don't know what you're trying to achieve with your contract, if I don't know what your buyer's objective is with your offer, it's called an offer until it's signed by everybody. If I don't know what your objective is with your offer, I can't tell you anything other than, yeah, it's a legal contract because you filled in the blanks. But if I don't know what they're trying to accomplish, I can't really help you make sure that it's what you want to send to someone. So when you do send me stuff to review, I kind of need to know what it is your buyer is trying to accomplish. Otherwise, I'm gonna have a lot of questions for you. In this case, this is done well from the seller standpoint and the buyer standpoint, let's assume. We have everything there that we need. That is the legal name that they got from the seller for this. Sorry, from the listing agent. Okay, price, $460. I don't have any idea what the asking price was, but this contract was accepted. $460, $1,000 down. For you guys, I would like to see more than $1,000 down on a $460,000 deal, but I don't know what any kind of extenuating circumstances were here, but that's what I would like to see. I do like that they checked the next box on line 30 and they put the 3 in the blank, even though it's supposed to be 3 anyway. Please fill in the blanks. I like that they did that here. Kristen, so everything here, guys, and we always talk about this, is negotiable. So the $1,000 down was completely negotiable. Okay. They might have had a reason they only want to do $1,000 down, but whatever, you're doing the best service for your client. If you get more money down, because if they walk away, you get, at least they have some deposits, some skin in the game. Okay, so this is all fine. The escrow agent's name, 95% financing. Don't leave blanks here. It will automatically fill this out for you. Just don't leave blanks if you can help it, and you can help it. There's your date for acceptance, which is the same date that the buyer initialed it, which is weird, but who knows? Maybe they already had it worked out what they were going to do. And there's your date for closing a month later. Very, very, very normal. Occupancy and possession. I want to talk about this. Occupancy and possession. If this is a house that has been is leased, or if they're going to live there after closing, check this box. Be very careful if you were the listing agent on a property that is leased. It's a investment property, or if your seller is going to stay there after closing. If you do not check this box, or make sure that the buyer's agent checks this box, or you make sure this box is checked, and then you have to have everybody initial it. Otherwise, you have to have the place broom swept and ready to occupy on closing date. That is not what you want to be doing. If you have obviously an investment property with a tenant, you can't do that. You can't promise that, and they can hold your feet to the fire. You signed a contract that said you would have them out that day. So that's a breach. Okay. So make sure, just pay attention if you have an investment property that this is done. Let's go down to assignability. I get this question from you guys a lot. There are 3 options: may assign and thereby be released from any further liability under this contract. If you're a listing agent, this is most likely a wholesaler or a flipper, okay, trying to flip the contract. They get released and they can wash their hands of it. They don't even need to make sure it closes. All right, they get their 10 grand, 20 grand to walk away, and this new person is your problem. If that is the case, you have no way to go after anybody here if they don't perform. All right. Second one, may assign but not be released from liability under this contract. I do not mind this one. If I'm on the buy side, I click this one. If I'm on the listing side, I don't mind that one.